Welcome to What is Black Podcast, a podcast where we have frank discussions about being Black in America to help parents guide their children through the positive and negative narratives. I'm your host, Dr. Jacqueline Duget. So let's get started with today's show.
Hi, everyone, and again, welcome to another episode of What is Black Podcast. I am so excited to bring to you today a special guest, or our special guest for today's episode, Danae Aicher, who's the Director of Communications of Mocha Moms, Inc. Welcome, Danae. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for having me.
As I was talking to Danae earlier, I definitely wanted to have Mocha Moms as a guest on the podcast because I'm always looking for opportunities and to highlight organizations that uplift African American families. So, Danae, before we get started, for those who aren't familiar with Mocha Moms, if you can give us an orientation about Mocha Mom Inc.'s purpose and mission.
So, Mocha Moms began, more than 20 years ago, 22 years ago, I think, to be exact, as an organization to support Black moms, Black mothers who made the choice to stay at home and raise their families. And 20 years ago, we were at a distinctly different time than we are now, but 20 years ago, that would have been important. And so it started off very local, like in the DMV, up in Maryland, so that Maryland, D.C., Northern Virginia area, and quickly grew to be a national organization because what was clear was that Black mothers across the country who were in record numbers at that point making this choice to leave their careers behind and be at home to raise their own children, that was actually historically significant. Over the years, we have changed a little bit, and now we are a national support organization for mothers of color, regardless of what their professional status. So many of our moms have, as you can imagine, in 20 years have gone back to work. Newer moms who have joined the organization, maybe perhaps stayed away from work for just enough for maternity leave and return to work. Many of our moms are still at-home moms. Other moms have at-home businesses. Right now, in 2019, we are quite literally a national support organization for mothers of color, for all mothers of color in general.
Oh, I think that's awesome. Now, like you said, you've been around, Mocha Moms has been around for over 20 years. And I was wondering, how has the organization stayed so relevant for moms?
I think one of the ways was being clear and explicit that our mission was not focused solely on stay-at-home moms. So if we think about the arc of specifically Black womanhood and Black motherhood throughout the history of this country, for instance, we certainly have a strong history of mothering other people's children, right? Mm-hmm. So many Black women have been domestics at various points throughout U.S. history, and forced through whatever circumstances to mother other people's children. And so there came a time when there were hundreds of us across the country who, because of economics, right, could make different choices for our lives, and wanted to connect with other women who were making similar choices. But then, of course, times have changed. Our economy, certainly in more contemporary times in the last 10 years, hit a recession, right? And many people had to go back to work. And even if they didn't have to for economic reasons, seasons change in our lives, right? Children go to school and you need or want to do something with your life. And so I think that as times have changed, and our mothers have changed with those times, and our organization changed also to be more relevant. In addition, we've recognized that and been more clear and explicit in recent years about who we are serving. Also, if you joined the organization 20 years ago, your children look different now. Your children are different now. They're in college. They're out of the house, and in order to we're also at this point explicit about the importance of those moms, right? Those moms who have been through it, have been through the newborn stage, the toddler stage, the elementary and middle school phase, and the high school phase, and they have been through the process of helping their children figure out what to do next, been through the process of sending kids off to college and what that means, or helping children make other choices. And I have very young kids. I have a 5 and a 9-year-old. I need that wisdom, right, of women who have gone through it before me. And so we've been explicit about the significance and the importance of those moms and wanting to keep them around in the organization and keeping them engaged. We've developed a teens and tweens network because many of us, I joined the organization when I had a newborn, right? And at that point, the kids would come with us to the meetings, and it was like a big play date. And we are clear that our support group meetings are not play dates, right? They are support meetings for moms. But if you have young babies, your children are with you. And the added benefit was that it was a space where children were welcome to participate. But of course, as they grow into teenagers, right, we want those moms to still feel like they have a place. So we developed a network specifically to have teens and preteens stay engaged as well. So we make these changes specifically to meet the needs of our mothers wherever they are, whatever phase they are in their motherhood.
Which I think is great. My kids now, I now have, and I say this a lot, because I talk about my kids, a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old. And I don't think I really knew about Mocha Moms when my kids were younger. And I reached out to a friend of mine who actually was involved in Mocha Moms when her kids were littler, I should say, younger, just to kind of get a sense of her experience. And again, she highlighted those very things that you talked about, the fact that, she was transitioning with young kids, had worked full time, and then was a stay-at-home mom, and found joining Mocha Moms to be a great support for her, as well as socialization for her kids. And I think that's important. And I've also heard too that in some instances, right there, in some communities, African American moms might feel somewhat isolated sometimes because they don't see other moms like themselves. And so Mocha Moms might be an opportunity, to network. I know Mocha Moms isn't solely for African American women, but there is opportunities to network with similar moms with similar experiences, perhaps, or even you learn other experiences that other moms share, and again, part of that support network that you all provide.
Right. What I hear so often from moms is, particularly new moms, right, who come to us is, I was a member of any number of organizations, right, for moms, and all these classes, and how that the women were nice and the organizations were fine, but the reality is, Black mothers face different issues. Mothers of color in general face different parenting issues. Many parenting issues are the same. And the reality is that we have an added layer. And those other organizations, which are predominantly white, for instance, those conversations don't come up. And if they do, right, it's me in a room explaining to people what this extra layer is. You come to a Mocha Moms meeting, it's all shorthand. We don't need to explain the issues because we all get it. And that's a beautiful sisterhood.
So we talked about, I'm just curious, how did the name Mocha Mom, so like what would you describe as a Mocha Mom?
As in what kind of person? is a Mocha Mom.
I would say, what type of person would you say is a Mocha Mom, or even how that name even came about? Is catchy, Mocha Mom. I was just wondering.
It is. And Shelley, our founder, I'm sure I must have asked that question before and just, don't always remember, because we asked, you talking about the color, like the moms who were the color of a mocha coffee drink? And she was like, no, I just think it was just catchy. Right? So
it's very catchy.
It really is catchy. And people have wondered, right? So wonder what that means. Are we talking about mothers of kids of color? And I'm like, no, we're talking specifically about mothers of color. And so the reality is anyone can be a Mocha Mom. You don't even have to be a mother of color to be a Mocha Mom. You just have to support the mission, right? So I often liken it to the NAACP, right? The NAACP, which stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, which of course we wouldn't use that term now necessarily, but anyone can join the NAACP. You simply have to support the mission and the goals of the organization. And the same is true for Mocha Moms. Anyone can join. You simply have to support the mission and the goals of the organization. And those are things like certainly primarily, right, the goal is to support mothers of color. And that means supporting issues that matter to us as mothers of color. We also are, one of the foundational pillars has been community service. And that's really, really important to Mocha Moms. Another foundational pillar is supporting the Black family. That's foundational, right? And so all of those things play into who we are as an organization.
I wanted to touch a little bit about, you said one of the pillars is community service. And I found that pretty interesting, instead of only support, only being a support system for moms, and as well for the kids, I love the fact that you all have a community service, and especially interested in the initiative Closing the Gap in Minority Health, Prosperity, and Achievement. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit more information about that initiative of Mocha Moms and why it was so important to add that community service piece to the organization.
Well, because the gap exists, right? We know that there is a gap that falls along racial lines when it comes to health, when it comes to economics and finances, and when it comes to educational achievement. And the gap is not about class. We want to talk about it, I think, often in those terms, but it really isn't. It is a gap that is specific, that falls along racial lines regardless of class. And the gap should not exist. And while there are all kinds of barriers out there and reasons why the gap exists, but what we know is that we can do our part, and that is what's important, right? Like that, we are a community, and we have to work for the community. We have to serve the community, and that is a value that is important to us as adults and moms. And it's a value that we want to pass on to our children, that you always have to, it's not ever just about you, right? It's not ever just about me. It is about us. So it's us as a family unit, it's us as a community, it's us as a people, and so we serve.
So can you speak to, I guess, a little bit more about maybe some of the, under that initiative, that umbrella, like what sort of activities, right, Mocha Moms, or does it depend on each chapter?
Well, in some ways it depends on each chapter. Each chapter certainly can pick its own community service initiative. And that's changed over time. Sometimes it's been mandated that we will do a certain thing, and then other times chapters can choose whatever community service that works for them and that their members care about. The one thing that is, two things actually have been uniform across the country in every chapter has been around education. So every chapter has had to, we call it boys booked on barbershops or beauty shops. And every chapter sets up a reading nook and a Black-owned barber or beauty shop, because we know that in the spaces where children might be waiting for periods of time, that they may as well be reading, or someone should be reading to them. And so every chapter has had to go and set up a reading nook in a beauty shop or a barber shop. Another big initiative that we've had across the country is Occupy Schools. And in the first place, it is a pledge to being involved in our young people's education, and not just for like my individual child, right? So particularly for those of us who are stay-at-home moms, I actually went back to work myself a year ago. But when I would notice this when I was in my children's school, I'm not just there for them. I know that my presence sends so many messages and represents so much for those children and those children of color specifically, whose parents can't be there for whatever reason. And so we're occupying that space, not just for our own children, but for our, right, our children. And in addition to that, each chapter every year holds an education summit. And now how that looks across the country changes, but there's an education summit every year where it may be that the mothers in the chapter at a certain time of year are sharing all the information they have about the various school options in their area. So other chapters do it bigger, where they have a variety of schools come in to talk either to the members specifically, or they open it up to the public to share information about what educational options there are in the area. Because for those people who are just putting their kids in school, or who are noticing that their children are in school and they're noticing that, maybe my child needs something a little different, it's good to know exactly what options are out there. And we know that finding the right match, educational match for your child, is so important to that child's success in school and to closing that gap, that we figure that we as Mocha Moms are in a perfect position to provide that information to our sister moms and our community, for those who make it open to the public.
Right. So
that's an important one.
Okay, which I think speaks to, like you said, your overall mission to not only support moms but also provide opportunities to serve the community. I was wondering, though, you said that the organization's open to a mom, whether or not she's at home or going back to work. And I was wondering, how does that look in terms of meetings? Or is it different for stay-at-home moms versus moms that are working in terms of how the meetings are set up or when the meetings occur?
Well, obviously, it's different for when the meetings occur, right? So chapters can, depending on what the makeup of the chapters are. I mean, there are some chapters where almost everyone, if not everyone, has since gone back to work. And there are some chapters that are overwhelmingly stay-at-home moms, and there are other chapters that have a really good mix. And so generally, those the support meetings tend to be at most weekly, and then in some or maybe every other week, and so generally the meetings for at-home moms are sometime during the weekday. And then chapters can decide for themselves what meeting times work best for those moms that have, that work throughout the day and have gone back to work. But those are support group meetings, and the topics that come up in those meetings are determined by local chapters. They have that autonomy. They just have to provide the meeting time and space for each of those groups. And then what's also required is a monthly Mom's Night Out or Mom's Night In, where
I think a lot of moms love that.
Yes, and let me tell you, we enjoy it quite a lot. And it's a time for us to get together and have a good time. We have exhales, which are very specific meetings where the confidentiality and the support inside that space is sacred. And those and that's a healing time for moms, right? If you're a mom who's perhaps there's something going on in your marriage, right? And you just need a strong support. of sisterhood, right? Perhaps you're dealing with something with a child. Perhaps you're having health issues, whatever the issue is, right? And you need a real strong sisterhood of support to hold you through that. That's what those exhales are for. I'm so excited because we don't do this every year, but this year, 2019, we are having a national exhale.
Oh, great.
And we're those who can make it, we're gathering in Myrtle Beach, and it's just going to be a weekend of just our time together as moms from across the country. And I love those times, those years when we get moms together from across the country, because it is always a lot of fun. And because we share this sisterhood, even when we may not know each other, just meeting each other in that space and understanding that you share that sisterhood has always been so powerful and so much fun. And look, there are a lot of organizations for women that we can join, right? Many of us have sororities and all kinds of groups that we're a part of. But I think what makes Mocha Moms so unique is that this is the one organization, and the first organization, as far as we can tell, that was focused specifically on our roles as mothers, right? It's not for the kids, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about, just kind of general sisterhood. It is a sisterhood just around what many people would agree is the most important role we have. All of us have important work to do, whether or not we're doing it professionally or anything like that. But that motherhood, right, is so powerful. And having support specifically around that role, I just watch women cry over because of being so grateful for that kind of support.
So, yeah, this has been a great conversation. Also, before we wrap up, if you could, tell our listeners if there are moms who are not currently Mocha Moms, how they can learn more about Mocha Moms and potentially how to join.
I would just say go to mochamoms.org. You want to go to mochamoms.org, and peruse the website and register to join us, sign up to join us. And if there is not a local chapter in your area, you can join as an at-large member and still get the benefits of the sisterhood. We have a variety of networks. We have a network for military moms. We have a network for moms of children with special needs. We have a marriage support network. We have a network for, look, the reality is there are moms out there who are single now, who either never were married or who are divorced or who are widowed. We have a network for them, for that group, and all are welcome in the organization. And so I would say just go online to mochamoms.org and sign up and join us.
Thank you for listening to this episode of What is Black Podcast. We'd love to hear what you think about this episode and other episodes. So please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts and interact with us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Until next time.